When I came back to fountain pens a little over 10 years ago, there were three main pens people were talking about: the Lamy Safari, the TWSBI Eco, and the Pilot Metropolitan. And so today I want to talk about this pen. I want to see, is this still a good value option, a good entry-level option here in 2026? So let's have a look at it now. As always, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications button, and please consider becoming a member of this channel, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get priority comments, you'll get early access to videos, and eventually some Q&As and things like that. But right now, let's look at this entry-level option from my favorite Japanese pen brand, Pilot. So the Pilot Metropolitan, it's known under a bunch of different names: the Metro, the M2, a bunch of different things. And some countries, like in Japan's like the Cocoon, I think it is, which is very similar. Simple packaging, nothing fancy, simple cardboard, outer box with a internal plastic box here, or case here, and it sits in a piece of foam. Mine came with the Con 40 converter, which is not an amazing converter. Depending on which version of the pen you get, how old the stock is, you'll either get the Con 40 or the Con 20, which I think is also called like the Con B, I think, from memory, which is a little squeezy one, which is fine, but none of the converters that Pilot make are particularly great. But the point of today's video is to talk about this pen, do a very brief overview sort of style review, talk about what I like about it, what I don't like necessarily, and talk a little bit about whether I think this pen is still worth being one of those highly suggested entry-level pens on the market now. So let's start by talking about it. This particular version is the Retro Pop Turquoise. So you can see bright turquoise. I've got this in blacks and bronze and graphite grays and things like that, different sort of versions. There's a purple version. There are quite a few different colors available. Generally speaking, only with fine and medium nibs, although sometimes you can get a stub nib, which is a 1mm stub nib, which is okay. I've got one of those as well. We're talking about this version today. This one I bought a couple of months ago for this video specifically, because I wanted to see if it's still good quality, and also, as I said, is this still worth the money in 2026? So Retro Pop Turquoise, it's a nice metal body. It's a lacquered brass body. It's got a nice sort of springy clip on the top there. Simple domed end that swells to the cap where the cap snaps on. And then we get this little like decorative motif area, and on the Retro Pop version, it's these circles. You can get like crocodile skin looking versions, things like that. And then the barrel tapers down another rounded end. As I said, it's a snap cap, and it's a nice secure snap. I've never had a problem with the snap caps on the Metropolitans. The pen posts, and it posts okay, nice and sort of deep and secure. One thing I really like about this pen, and I'll come back to this in the pros and cons, is it's got a nice sort of simple classic design. Like there's nothing outrageous about it in any direction. When you uncap it, you get a little step down onto this little like capping ring, then the section which tapers quite a lot, and then we get the Pilot nib there. This is a medium. It says Pilot M and Japan and plastic feed. These are really nice nibs. These are the same nibs, just printed differently as you get on the Kakuno and the Prera and things like that. You unscrew it, and then plastic on metal threads there. So something to keep an eye on over time with these pens. As I said, I've been using the Metro for 10 years. I've not got a problem with any of mine. I have it here with the black cartridge that came with it. It's working my way through that. I really like Pilot Black as a solid everyday black ink. And my theory with these cartridges is that they're going to come in the packet. So I always use them because they are ink, and particularly when you've got something like Pilot Black, which is not too bad. And you don't want to waste that just for the sake of not using the plastic of the cartridge. So I always use the cartridge. So yes, simple snap cap, simple pen, nice metal, simple lines, nothing fancy, but also nothing super expensive. When I bought this one, it retailed in Australia for $52.99 Australian. That's a considerable markup from where they started 10 years ago. Like, we're talking at least, gosh, were they $39 or something when I bought my first ones? So, you know, it has jumped up quite a lot in price. It's on one major US retailer, it's $34 now, and it was, I think, 18. So the price jump has been huge. We haven't seen a price jump yet this year, and Pilot have been putting up their prices. A big part of that is the fact that this uses a stainless steel nib and, you know, basic sort of materials, and it's a pen they're trying to keep at an entry level. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see another little step up in the not too distant future. And so that is the basics of this very simple, nice pen. Let's do a quick size comparison now. So I have it here alongside two other, you know, well-known pens. Firstly, another great entry-level pen, the Lamy Safari. You can see it's a little shorter than Safari. Not by much, but just, you know, maybe a millimeter or two. And then I have it alongside the Pilot Custom 823, which is my favorite Pilot and probably one of my favorite pens, full stop. This pen gets a lot of use. I love this pen. It's a great workhorse, great everyday pen. Much higher price point, you know, over 550 Australian dollars versus 52 Australian dollars. So you get 10 Metros for the price of one 823, but the 823 has a 14 karat gold nib, vac filling system as opposed to the steel nib. There's a lot going on there, but you can see where it fits size-wise there. Uncapped, you see it's still shorter, and of course you see the difference between the Pilot Metropolitan nib there and then the larger 823 nib. And then when posted, it's easily the shortest of the three. I like how it posts. It posts nice and securely and relatively deeply enough, and is still very, very usable in that format. Basic dimensions of the pen are 138 millimeters when it's capped. It's 126 when it's uncapped, so it's okay. Like, it's very usable. It's 153 when it's posted, which is a nice length. I don't find myself favoring either. It just sort of depends how I feel on the day. It posts deep enough that it doesn't rub, you know, and it's not particularly sharp edges anyway, but it's a nice size like that, and the balance remains good. The grip section is about 8.4 millimeters, which is relatively, it's on the thinner side, shall we say. It's about 13 millimeters around the cap. The pen weighs 26 grams, 17 in the body and 9 in the cap. So the balance remains good. And because it's not super long or back weighted, it is perfectly usable. In terms of ink capacity, obviously you've got, you know, a cartridge or a converter and a cartridge. The converter is supposed to have 0.8 of a milliliter ink capacity, which I think is nonsense. You're never going to get that into one of those Con 40 converters, but the cartridge is about 1.1 milliliters. So I like the Pilot cartridges, and I really like refilling the Pilot cartridges. There's a few of my higher end Pilot pens, things like the Sylvan and the Urushi that have a that I just refill cartridges for instead of using converters on them. So let's do a little writing here with the Pilot Metropolitan, I'll say a retro pop. Turquoise. This has a steel medium. I think this is the Pilot, I can't exactly remember, is it Pilot number 5 size nib? They had their own sizing system, but it's not a number 5, standard number 5 nib. Pilot proprietary nibs, as well as, I should have said, Pilot proprietary cartridge and converter. And the ink in this is simple Pilot Black. I've always liked how the Pilot Metropolitan writes. It's really reliable. It's very smooth. I wouldn't say it's a dry writer. Reverse writing, very scratchy but doable. Not a flex nib, quite stiff, but you can, if you're gentle, squeeze a little bit of line variation out. So with no pressure versus pressure, you do see a slight variation there. Quick writing. Like, obviously completely illegible, but you can see there's no issues there. One great thing about the Pilot fountain pens is their reliability. They're consistent. There's no issues there. There's no hard starts. There's no ink starvation, all of that kind of thing. You know, if the Metro is not to your taste, totally understand that. But there's a lot that the pens like this get right. So I already covered the price of this pen. I said it's $52.99 Australian or $34 US, depending on the retailer you go to, if you get it on sale, stuff like that. But those are general sort of prices. That's not bad. It's a couple of dollars more than a Lamy Safari, less than the All-Star. But there are pros and cons. So let's talk about those to start with. Cons, the converter. Any converter you get that fits this, the Con 20, Con 40, whatever, is rubbish. Getting a full ink capacity on those is not great. And even when you do, you're not getting a whole lot of writing out of it. Other issues might be the step down onto the barrel for some people. That's quite a step down. And the other thing is, like, while it's balanced okay in a larger hand, if you've got a smaller hand, because that grip section is plastic, the weight is in the back. So if you've got a smaller hand, you might feel it slightly back weighted. I tend to hold it back on that sort of step down a little bit for a bit of extra sort of grip and girth. And it's a nice size for me, and the balance is quite good, but it is a noticeable difference in like where the balance point of the pen is given that sort of plastic grip section. So what are the pros? Well, there's a nice few variations of colors. There's blacks, bronze, gray, silver, gold, purple, and then, or the violet, and then this sort of turquoise. There's sort of standard ones. There's like the plain versions, there's the crocodile version, there's the retro pop, all that kind of stuff. There's lots of different versions. So find something that suits you. There are a couple of nib options, fine, medium, as I said, and a 1mm stub, depending on where you're buying from. Particularly in the US, I think you can get the stub nibs. Most Australian retailers tend to only stock the fine and medium. But it's a wonderful nib. It writes beautifully, it's consistent, it's smooth. It's a small nib, but it packs a lot of punch. And then the other thing I really love, or two other things. Firstly is, as I said, the classic design. Nice smooth lines, nothing that is aggressive or jumps out or anything like that. Just nice and simple and clean. The other thing I love, and I love, is the QC at Pilot. I've not had a bad Metropolitan. I'm not saying there aren't bad Metropolitans, but I've not had a bad one. I've probably had, I want to say 8 or 9 Metropolitans over the years. And I've either given them away, or I've done things like practice my nib tuning on them, all that kind of stuff. I even sanded one down to remove the lacquer off the brass and had a brass one for a while. Actually have no idea where that one ended up. But that's a whole other story. But yes, it's the QC on these is great. Whether you get the Kakuno, the Pereira, there's a few other pens, the Explorer, things like that. The entry level Pilot pens are fantastic, especially the ones that have this nib. Is the design going to be for everyone? Is the nib going to be for everyone? Is the price point going to be for everyone? No. And that's what I want to get to now. Is this pen still a good, is it still a good entry-level pen in 2026? And B, is it worth the money in 2026? Let's start by saying, is it a good entry-level pen? Yes. It's not a garish pen. It's not going to stand out. If you're using this in the office, particularly the darker versions and like the graphite and things like that, it's not going to stand out. You are going to get away with using a fountain pen without raising too many eyebrows if that's what you're intending. As I said, those nice simple lines mean that you get something that looks like a fountain pen. I know that doesn't mean anything, but like, while it doesn't stand out, it still looks like a fountain pen. It's got a classy sort of, look about it. It's professional, but still with some versions have a lot of personality. So I think it's a good entry-level pen. The nibs are reliable. Fine and medium, even if that's all you get access to, they're reliable. And if you wanted to get, the Kakuno with the extra fine, you could put that on this. I don't know if there is an extra fine Metropolitan, if there ever was, but like that nib exists and it could go on this pen, and then you get a little smiley face and all that kind of stuff as well. Do I suggest this pen to new users? Yes, quite regularly. If they want something a little bit more weight, a little bit more professional, maybe a little less out there, something like the Safari or the Eco, which have really distinctive looks, this is a nice option. Is it worth the money in 2026? I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, from the perspective that it fits really nicely between the lightweight, youthful Kakuno and something like the Pereira, which is another plastic pen, but for me, like the capping of that, the posting of that, the feel in the hand of the Pereira is gorgeous. So it fits nicely in that. It gives a nice option, having a metal pen with a little bit more weight, a little bit more robust perhaps. It's good. Is it worth $52.99 Australian? Is it worth more than a Safari? For me, things like the fact that there are more limited nib options. If you get a Safari, which costs $49.99 Australian, on it, you can get extra fine, medium, and broad nibs. So already you've got more options. Then you can add into that by getting, like the calligraphy nibs, or, sometimes there's like those, Chinese cursive nibs and things like that you can put on these for like an extra $30, which makes this more limited. There's also less colors available, and there are some design elements like that step down and that lightweight plastic section that some people aren't going to love. It's a round section, which is great, so it's not got like a tri-grip like a number of things like the Safari. So there is a lot going for this pen. I think it was better value 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this was a remarkable pen, but what we have to take into account, firstly, this is a Japanese pen. So there's going to be a slight premium above some of the Chinese pen models, but the Chinese pen companies are making pens that are simply remarkable at a much lower price point. Yes, that's a whole other debate, a whole other argument. But if you have $50 Australian sitting in your hand for a fountain pen, is this the pen I would suggest for you to get? This is where it becomes hard, because yes, this is going to be reliable, it's going to write well, all of that. Or do you go onto eBay, AliExpress, Amazon, those kinds of sites, and buy something like a Hongdian or an Asvine, or even like some of the nice sort of like more premium Jinhaos? You're going to get a good quality pen that writes well. You won't get like necessarily the QC you get from Pilot, but I've had really wonderful experiences with Asvine and Hongdian and those kinds of brands. So it's hard. It's hard. If you're in a store and this is the pen that's there and you want to buy it, it's a great option. I think the price point is pushing now the value point for this pen. But on the flip side of that, you get a pen that writes really, really well. So it's going to come down to your assumption of value and what you like. But for $52.99 Australian, there are other pens on the market. It's a little, I think an Eco these days is $55 or $60 from TWSBI. That's a piston filler, more nib variety, plastic body. So it comes down to what you want. And if this pen is bang on everything you want, you are not going to be disappointed. It will write, chances are it will write very, very well. And if it doesn't, a lot of retailers will help you out there. So just things to keep in mind with this pen. So thank you for watching. I hope you found that video interesting and useful. Please like and subscribe, as I said, and consider becoming a member of this channel. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.